Welcome to the Resilient Campus Podcast, amplifying the voices of college inclusion innovators. I'm your host, Sabby Labor, founder and CEO of Resilient Campus. Join me each week as I interview professionals on the front lines of campus and community movement building. For more information, please visit resilientcampus.com/podcast. This is episode number 4 of the Resilient Campus podcast. Today we're speaking with Sinclair Ceasar from the SA Pro Next Door. Sinclair Ceasar is an assistant director of student life at Loyola University, Maryland. He lives on campus with his wife, Tanisha. He has several years of experience with residence life and social justice work. Sinclair enjoys doing improv in Baltimore, doing speaking engagements at various colleges and universities, and sending weekly inspirational emails at www.thesapronextdoor.com. Welcome, Sinclair. Thanks for taking time to be with me today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Very happy.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what should we know about you?
I think you should know that I love getting to know people and figuring out just how people work. I'm really curious about that. I'm like people watcher / the person at the party who's talking to everyone / the person who sometimes awkwardly asks like deeper questions the first time meeting you. 'Cause I'm always just trying to connect. And so like sometimes I could be like, oh, well, who is this guy? But it's meaningful. I really want to get to know people. So that's something to really know about me and something I kind of lead with in everyday life.
And Sinclair, what pronouns are good for you?
He, him, his. How about for you for your pronouns? Which are good for you?
I use she, her, and they, them. Sinclair, when you think about the identities that are most salient for you, what identities are prominent? What do you want folks to know about who you are?
Most days is being Black, so race and ethnicity. I don't think I coined this phrase, but I say it sometimes. I say that I'm Black every day. Maybe that's just me trying to come into terms with, because like I have a lot of friends, and a lot of my friends don't have to not be Black. And, back in the day, like before college, before wokeness was a thing, it was like people were always go like, Sinclair, like, why are you always talking about race? Like, why do you make everything about race? And now at 29, having some basic knowledge of intersectionality, I realize that a lot of things are, well, race is included. It's included with me, right? And so, like, for me, it's like, versus me trying to rationalize things and trying to, like, explain myself, I'm just like, I'm Black every day. I'm Black right now. No matter what happens, it could, potentially that could be a thing for me. It might not be, but most of the time it is. Like I'm often thinking about my Blackness in a country that's 13% African American, some form of African American or Black. That means a lot of people aren't Black. So obviously I'm thinking about, my race. But yeah, for me, it's race, and that's kind of how I move through the world and what I think about often, no matter where I am, work, home, doesn't matter. Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that. So tell us about the work that you're doing today.
My gut reaction is I'm just trying to get better at it. I feel like I'm never doing it perfectly or never doing it real well. There's always places to grow. Working student life, and what that means for us is it's residence life. So I'm a hall director in our senior area. So like 96% of our students in my area are seniors. They're about to graduate. Working at a predominantly white institution. It's a Jesuit institution. Loyola University is in Baltimore. We're the first Loyola. A fun fact. I hope that's true. I think I saw that online. I think I saw it on Wikipedia. It's not like something that we broadcast. I'm Safe Zone trained. So what does that mean? That means I've taken 3 courses / trainings on identifying, things like ways I've been negative and other people have been negative towards people in the LGBTQIA+ community, talking about allyship and what that means, talking about ways to just listen better. And it's more so a starting point. And so for me, and how I identify now as a Safe Zone facilitator, I'm more so like an ally in training, right? Like I'm not like the perfect ally. I'm not like completely noticeable everywhere, but I'm working on it. And so if a student came to me, I could create a safer space than I could years ago. And I've had people come to me and tell me things, and I've been able to listen and be receptive and ask them what they need. And so I'm glad to be at that point. And so that's one thing that really informs my work is listening and trying to be a better person for people. And one way I do that is through using the things I've learned in my Safe Zone training. And then another thing that I'm doing on my campus, I try to do coffee dates with students. And so Starbucks, for better or for worse, I mean, they have food, so if you don't like coffee, they don't have to drink the coffee. But I try to meet students where they are there because it's kind of our hub on campus. A way to be inclusive is to invite different students to coffee who might be missing otherwise, like students who might not be coming to our programs in the residential halls, students who might not be coming to campus activities, students who we might miss because they're not getting in trouble or they don't come across our radar. Like just those students. So I'm trying to catch them all, one student at a time. Those are two ways that I kind of try to get in and do work in addition to my job on paper, which is be a hall director.
And so what are you most surprised about when you're meeting with students one-on-one? Like, what are they thinking about these days? What are they losing sleep over? What's at top of mind for them in these coffee meetings?
So I try to do like a mini project, and I wanted to have 45 coffee meetups in a year last year. And it was just a random number. Just wanted to have a goal so that way I can accomplish it. And I don't think I got to 45. The main point was asking students about the legacy they wanted to leave at Loyola. And I recognize that's a big question to ask somebody and kind of load it. Like, what's your legacy? And they're like, I want to just go to class and get good grades. Like, what do you mean legacy, right? What are you talking about? Who is this guy? He's so weird. And so I asked them that question in different ways. Like, who do you want people to remember you as? Or looking back maybe a couple of years after you graduate, what do you want to say is one thing that you did and maybe did well? Or maybe one way you challenged yourself. And so getting them to think deeper about who they are. And so some people are thinking about they want to be a better, they want their parents to look at them as somebody who achieved well. Some of them are like, I want to be somebody who pushed myself. I had a white male tell me they wanted to learn more about diversity and learn more, and specifically go to more events that our Black Student Association puts on and interact with students in those spaces. And so I kind of set it up for them to answer within that framework. And it'll take a little while, obviously, to getting to know a person, but they do know how they want to be remembered in some sense. And they do have these goals. It's just kind of providing some language around that, right? And just kind of putting it out there in a way. And I like that approach better than who do you want to be in 10 years? What do you think this major will get you in 20 years? Or how do you want to contribute to the workforce? And they're like, I just learned my locker combination and now I'm in college. So trying to break it down for them. And I think they're thinking about relationships. I think they're thinking about how they're going to push themselves. I think they're thinking about how their family and friends will think of them. So the relationships seem to be a core of a lot of the answers that I receive in these conversations, which is really cool. It's not things, it's people, which is nice.
I'm familiar with some of the awesome values that you're living into and sharing out and the insights that you're bringing into the world of student affairs. So let me ask you the question that you ask your students. What's the legacy that you hope to leave in the field of student affairs?
I guess I'm coming from more of a selfish point of view, not selfish, just think about me first, right? Like who I was in school and who I needed. And I think who I was in school and who I needed was somebody to listen to me and take me seriously and give me some steps to get to where I wanted to go. And so I think for me, that's been something that I've been getting back on track with when it comes to my students. I got into this field. I went to grad school several years ago. I got my leadership degree at Rosemont College. People think I've been in the field forever. I'm like, no, I'm super young in the field. I'm so new. I'm newborn, right? Fresh. I did grad school. I graduated 2012 from Rosemont, and then I went to Mount St. Mary's University, worked there for 4 years and change. Now I'm at Loyola, literally brand new. I've just been doing a lot of stuff, right? Sometimes too much. And one thing I realized was that I got caught up in what I wanted to give students and who I wanted them to be and what I thought was best for them, if I'm being honest. And so I put that into my programming, into my supervision of my student workers, into everything. Just here's what I think is good for you. Based on the theory that I think I know and the conference sessions that I've gone to and the books that I've read through and the mentorship that I've gotten, I'm going to just give that right to you and you're going to be great. And I had a colleague once tell me in grad school, they were and it totally pissed me off. They were like, are you putting your students first? Is this something that they need? And I was like, what? They don't know what they need, right? So now I'm like, what was wrong with that thinking? So much. They're not these blank slates, right? They're not they're not a piece of paper for me to just draw all over, right? It's more we're both looking at a piece of paper and I'm saying, what do you want to do with this? And they might say I want to crumble it up, or I want to make an airplane, or I want to draw on it. And I'm like, all right, how can I give you the tools to do this? Or are you even okay with that? And what that does is puts me in positions to hear no, and to hear I don't want that. And I got to be okay with that as a professional and a practitioner. And so what I'm learning is the person I want to be for my students, the person I want people to say I was like 10 or 20 years from now is like, Sinclair went to a space and made it and helped make it great. And he gave the people what they wanted, and he was with them, and he didn't try to get shine or credit for it. He like did what they needed, and he learned to grow in patience, and he learned to grow in like being humble, and he learned to like really listen well. And like those are such big growth areas for me, and I feel like if I kind of work on those these next 10, 20 years, like I'm going to be a successful practitioner.
And so you mentioned when you were talking about kind of all the work that you're doing that sometimes you might be doing too much. Can you say a little bit about how you've been trying to either be reflective about that or move towards, looking at that balance? Like what are some of those strategies that you found useful in your kind of work life or however you're framing that personal balance?
If I wasn't trying to be too deep about it, I think the first answer would be like, I need to just sit down and think like, why am I doing this? Like, who am I trying to be? What you doing, boy? Like, that's what my parents used to say when I was growing up. Like, what you doing out there? What you doing? And, that's like putting that back on myself. And for a more serious answer would be like, I try to think about the things that I'm doing. I try to think, where does this get me? And what do I want this to get me? And who is it serving? For instance, I have a high presence on social media. And so now I've taken a break from that because I was just way too plugged in. I was so worried about my self-image. I was constantly scrolling, and I was so focused on if I'm getting likes, if people are commenting, if people are getting back to me, how's my brand looking? It was just too much. And at some point, I felt like my authenticity was suffering, and I felt like I just needed a break in general because I was just like, I'm just putting too much energy there. But the other side of that is that like my activity on social media has brought me the connections that I have. There's a lot of good that's come from it. Something I've learned in my little social media detox. I can approach these online spaces with an intentionality. And so what does that mean with the work I do professionally in my own workspace, the job I get paid for? Well, do I need to be on every committee? No. Do I need to go to every training that's offered? I don't. Do I need to be in the office late at night all the time? No. And so where does it get me to stay late tonight? Where does it get me to get prepared for this meeting on Thursday? Where does it get me to join this committee? Asking myself those questions so I can move more with intention, because I know that there are going to be a lot of times where I don't get to ask myself those questions and I just have to act. And if I'm constantly doing so much and getting quote unquote burnt out, there will be no me when it comes time to make decisions for myself that I actually have agency over. Right. And so like really using this freedom that I have of choice wisely so that when it comes to times where it's like, no, I just gotta get it done, I actually have the energy and the headspace to put myself to it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing all that. I think there was so much packed in there in regards to the agency authenticity, right? You're kind of making these decisions to kind of block out a lot of the noise, it sounds like, or to pause it, as much as you have control to do, but recognizing that the world we live in is pretty complicated in the way that we're able to opt out or not at all, right? So there's like this large spectrum on which people have access to us and we to them.
The way you said that was so perfect. Like there's so much out of our control. And I find it so important for me personally to use what I have control over and use that wisely, whether that's time, whether that's energy, whether that's resources, like as wisely as possible. And one thing I tell myself to continue to be fueled towards that is like, oh, I get to do this. Like I get to take a nap now. I get to say no to this. I get to put my out of office on and not respond to every email. I get to be a part of this committee. I get to go to this conference. It's going to really enrich me and others by doing this. I also get to just say, I don't even do any of this because I need to prepare myself for this really busy time, i.e. all of August, which is like a whole bunch of RA grad training, which I need to be present for and I want to be present for. So just want to put that in there.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that. You talked a little bit about your, educational pathway and a little bit about kind of what brought you to the work that you're doing in residential life. How did you arrive to this work of doing inclusion in higher education? Like, how did that emerge in your?
Several ways. So I did Jesuit Volunteer Corps Northwest when I graduated from St. Peter's University. So I went to this university in Jersey City, which is a Jesuit institution. And when I graduated, I went out west. I went to Oregon, volunteered for a year, working in a homeless shelter, working with youth. So I was a daycare manager. I lived in a home with about five other people, and I actually saw them this weekend. We had a reunion in Baltimore, which was great. And it was set up to focus on several areas. So simplicity, social justice, community, and spirituality. And the social justice piece was so eye-opening to me. because there were so many things that I knew about and knew of, but I didn't have language around it. And then there were things I wasn't thinking about enough of. And so I ended up in Oregon that year and stayed there for 3 years. And while in Oregon, I learned about anti-Semitism in the sense of working with Jewish people in their liberation, like intentionally, like with them in the room and talking about really tough things and listening. I learned about the racism that I've been facing all my life and didn't have language around it. Like I learned about microaggressions. I experienced blatant racism. I learned about, racial battle fatigue in many ways without knowing that term, but I learned about it there. And I think one thing that Jesuit Volunteer Corps did for me was we say it ruins you. So like I'm ruined for life is the tagline. And what it means is that I can't turn away from the injustices in everyday life, in the world, anywhere, because now I know they're there, right? It's kind of like the rock in your shoe. You're like, oh, that's on my mind for the rest of the day, even if I have like a date with someone and I'm going to a really cool party and the president comes in, right? Like I have to like really focus on this rock in my shoe until I get it out. And so learning that like there are so many things like that, right? And I'm called to do something. And so I brought that to grad school, and I brought that into my first 2 professional positions. And I know that I need to learn more. I need to be constantly learning more because it's about real people. Like it's not like these are some in the air, in the sky concepts, like helping people and looking out for people and liberation and equity. Like those words can be buzzwords, but when you meet a person, you're like, oh, got it. This is what's happening. Like something's not right. And so what can I do? That's really what it is. It really started off being something that was like, whoa, like a really intense 1-year experience. And then every year after that, finding ways to just add more into my toolkit so that I can be just a little bit more helpful, right? Like one person of many who's trying to do something to make this world a better place in small ways every day.
That's wonderful. That's a great segue, in thinking about the toolkit that you're continuously adding to. If you could share one book, podcast, or a resource that really informs the way that you think about your work or that you approach your work, what would that one resource be?
It's not a high read podcast, but it's a podcast called Another Round. And it's such a dope podcast. From what I see, they interview people who identify as women and try to get a lot of women of color on the show. And it's by 2 women who I think identify as Black. I'm not completely clear on that. But what I love about the podcast is, one, it's showing me things through another lens. Like I'm not often thinking about these things that they're talking about. And 2, I like when they ask their guests about what they're trying to unlearn. And that really gives me a good reminder to be thinking about that in my work, to never think that I got it all down, and to be honest about myself about in the areas where I need to learn more and where I need to just really shut up, sit down and just listen. And so that really helps me in my everyday work, because really with the work that we do, especially, res life housing, it can seem very cyclical and very similar. So here come students again. I got the pulse on them. Oh, here come students again. I know the music they're listening to. I know the trends. We get it. They're going to have these issues. The first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, got it down. And not be thinking about the individuals that make up those students, not be thinking about what their stories are, not be listening well. It's really important to be thinking about, okay, I got this student or the situation happened. What did I do well? What could I have done better? And what came up that I'm like, oh, I kind of got to unlearn in that area. Or what came up and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have some language around it. Podcast is great because it's listen to them anywhere. You don't have to sit down necessarily read a book. It's free as long as you have access to technology. And if you don't have a smartphone or a laptop, you can just go to your local library, wait a little bit, and then just go ahead and plug your headphones in and listen to the podcast there. So it's very, very accessible.
Yeah, I love podcasts. I mean, I just love, I kind of miss, like I used to have a commute that was really long, and I would kind of look forward to it in a way that it was my little mobile learning experience, because I would just leave in the morning, drive like an hour and a half, and I would put on a podcast that's, 50 minutes and then maybe another 20 minute, and then I'm there. And it made the time pass, and it's just a great way to hear other people's stories. I love that. So Sinclair, what's been the biggest lesson that you've learned in your professional life? What would you share with other folks in terms of what you've learned in the field of student affairs or just in higher education?
I had a really great mentor in grad school who was big on like me slowing down and like not trying to accomplish everything in a day, and really picking a particular area and working at that. almost relentlessly for however long it took me to work at that. So if my emails that I'm drafting and sending out have a lot of typos in it, right? Like, all right, this week and next week, I'm going to really work on sending well-written emails. If I'm late for meetings, I'm going to work on showing up 10 minutes beforehand. Even if it's boring as awful, I'm going to work on showing up 10 or 12 minutes beforehand. If I work with a parent and it didn't go so great, well, what researchers are on working with parents in the 21st century? How can we work better with working with parents and their emerging adults? And so maybe I need to do some research around that, some better listening, some talking to colleagues, and just take my time with it. And so really just slowing down, breaking these bigger problems, these bigger goals into smaller parts, and realizing that the person I'm going to be 20 years from now is not the person that I am today, and that's okay. And I feel like I started off in this field, felt like I had to be this superstar, I had to be published, everyone had to know me, and I had to be great, like a celebrity. I don't know why. I think I have some like this online stuff, like, oh, I'm going to this conference. Look at this person. They're killing it. Oh, look, I'm online in this chat. Look at this person. They're so great. And focus on that and not thinking about, okay, how am I doing my job well? How am I breaking apart the places where I'm not doing so well and taking my time with them and slowing down and getting better at them? And if I take that approach with anything, especially with people, I can serve them better over time. And so the other part of that, slowing down and breaking things apart, is like, that I've learned is just like being a little bit more gracious with myself and going, okay, you messed up, it didn't go well. Let's just accept the fact that happened and maybe like just be present to that. And then we can go ahead and like work on improving that. But just like kind of scaling back, I feel like it's constantly this thing of like, gotta get better, gotta be perfect because we gotta get our numbers in, we gotta meet these expectations, we gotta be taken serious as a field. And it's like, we're still people, right? And so like, if you keep moving at 100 miles per hour, you don't slow down to like make these corrections and have this acceptance and then move on to change, you're going to make that same mistake at some point down the line. And it might even be bigger and more detrimental to you and your organization. I'm really learning to slow down. That's a big lesson for me and something I'm still learning every day.
I love that. And it sounds like something that I hear a lot of student affairs professionals, particularly kind of this idea of the hamster wheel. We are always just going, striving for more. So I think that's a beautiful piece of guidance, even that folks listening in on this podcast can maybe even relate to in their own lives. I love that you shared that as one of the lessons that you've learned in your own professional life. When I think about folks who are doing inclusion work on college campuses, it's not always something that's in their formal title. You're working in residential life, and in your title, you're not required to be some diversity and equity and inclusion expert, right? Or specialist or leader. And yet that is something that's espoused as a value in our field. I'm looking forward to engaging folks as audience members or as listeners of this podcast that do formally wear a hat as that equity person, that inclusion leader, but also might not, right? It's just something that's like who they are. You know, like you said, they're ruined for life. Like they can't ever approach a date or daily situation without thinking like, wow, we really live in a anti-Black racist society, you know, and this is how it shows up in my daily life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When thinking about these folks, Sinclair, like what's that one piece of guidance that you have for newer professionals that are out in the field doing inclusion work on their campus? Like, what would you say to them to help them be able to do this work and sustain it on a daily basis?
Really, I think awareness is big. And all these buzzwords, it's hard for me to talk without thinking this is a buzzword. But let's just clear it out there. Everything's a buzzword. There we go. So mindfulness is a term that people are talking about a lot on college campuses, and a lot in the area of anxiety and depression, PTSD. And so mindfulness work is being done in counseling centers and for people in therapy. Mindfulness is something that can be in every facet of your life. It doesn't just have to be for mental illness, mental health. I experienced PTSD, I experienced anxiety, I experienced depression my own self. And so mindfulness helps me every day just to be a person. Mindfulness also is helpful when you're starting as a new professional, especially when you're entering spaces that you haven't necessarily had the privilege to enter before. So before you were on the other side of the table, people were telling you what to do and how to do things. Now people are saying, I need you to get this done. I'm trusting you to get it done. And so you probably find yourself going like, wait, what, me? You want me to do it? And so really being mindful and being aware of like the thoughts that are coming into your mind, thinking about how you're entering into spaces. Are you talking a lot? Are you quiet? Are you investigating things? Are you asking questions when you see that question need to be asked? And I would say along with that mindfulness, also kind of playing with the idea that if you're invited to the table, people are expecting you to contribute something, right? And so like if you've been invited to the table in any room, any space, I don't care. I do care, but I'm just saying it's not your gender, your race, all that matters. But don't put it in the context of, well, because of those things I can't contribute. No, well, because of those things you need to contribute. We need you to, and you are invited for a reason. You are lifting up somebody who's coming behind you. You're lifting up somebody who's in the same place as you, and you're lifting up people who've come before you as well, because they still need to look back and see you doing the work, right? And so if you are new and you're called into a space, be mindful, being aware of how you're showing up, and then also contributing however that is you contribute. So whether that's contributing in a staff meeting, or maybe after staff meeting, send up a follow-up email. Maybe that's pointing out things that aren't going so well. So like, wow, we have 3 students who constantly keep getting missed, and it's because of their socioeconomic status, or it seems like it's because of their race, or it seems like it's because they just don't have this particular access, or it's because of their abilities or disabilities. What are we going to do about that? Maybe it's on you. Maybe you're the person where we've been waiting for to say something, or to write something, or to just encourage somebody else to act, or maybe it's on you to act, and you can do that as a new professional. I would want any new professional to feel empowered to contribute in some way, shape, or form. And that does not mean show up and act like you are the president of the organization, or you're the director, or that you know more than you actually do, but use the resources that you have and use the knowledge that you do have to contribute where you feel like it's time to contribute. And you can't do that without being mindful, without being aware, and really just checking yourself. I'm kind of feeling upset right now. Oh, I'm kind of feeling angry. Oh, I'm actually feeling happy. Let's do this. It's go time. Or, oh, you know what? It's time for me to just sit back and just watch this thing, because it's time for me to learn. But at some point, contribute. Don't just sit back the whole year or the whole first 2 years and not contribute anything at all. Contribute something because we need you to, and we've invited you to, and it's going to help somebody. So,
Sinclair, how can folks connect with you and, tell us about what you're working on?
If you don't have a Twitter, get one. Professional development right there. If you don't have a Twitter, get one. Tweet that. I'm on the Twitter at Sinclair Ceasar. So find me there. I will be back on the social media eventually. And I do check my messages from time to time, but I'm not like scrolling through. I've probably spent like a total of a half hour a week on social media. It's that. And it's not even that much. It's like Jay-Z's album came out. Bam, I'm on Twitter to see what people are tweeting about, and then I'm off. So connect with me on Twitter. And then something I'm working on that I'm super excited about is I'm doing a mental health podcast. I have no idea what the title is, but I got 4 guests lined up. And what it is, we're talking about our everyday struggle, our everyday wins, whatever people want to talk about when it comes to mental health and mental illness and how it shows up in their life. And so I'm looking for guests. I'm looking for people to be on the show. And for people who are like, you know what, I got a mental illness that I want to talk about, I would love to have them on the show. And if they want to be anonymous, great. I'm not even worried about that. What my focus is like, okay, you got a story, you want to tell it, let's figure out how we're going to do that on the platform of it being a podcast. So first time doing something like this, can't wait. Again, got some people already lined up, but need more guests, and definitely looking for people of color. So people of color want to come out of the woodwork. I know it's scary. I'm Black. I get it. It is super frightening. I will work with you. Again, you can be anonymous. I would love to have people of color on here. That doesn't just mean Black. When people say people of color, they think that just means Black sometimes. I'm going to call that out. It doesn't just mean Black. It means people of color. So if you're like, oh, I got some color, hit me up. All right. And if you don't, if you are a white person, hit me up as well. I want you on my podcast so we can talk about mental health, and so we can break some of the stigma, both in the personal world and professional world, because it's terrible, it's disgusting, and it's ridiculous. Like, we are all people. We get to show up how we want to show up.
Wonderful. That's so important. I look forward to that project.
Thank you.
Sinclair, so we're wrapping up. Thanks so much for being with me today and for sharing your brilliance. I want to close out each episode with an inspirational quote as I send the listeners back out into the big bad world of ours. Today's quote comes from Ella Fitzgerald. She says, "Just don't give up trying to do what you really want to do. Where there is love and inspiration, I don't think you can go wrong." To all those listening in, thank you so much for all that you do. I appreciate you. Stay resilient. Thanks so much for tuning in. Head on over to iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss out on a single episode.